Hi, today's video we are joined back with our pain psychologist, Dr. Caroline Marlow, and we're here to discuss 5 psychological factors that can predict your recovery. Or in other words, we can help you answer the question, when will I get better and when can I get back to doing all the things that I like to do? So I'm Ali, I'm one of the physios from treatmyachilles.com. We're an online physiotherapy platform treating anything to do with Achilles tendon problems, whether that's a tear, a rupture, or if you've had surgery, or you've been diagnosed with something like an Achilles tendonitis or tendinopathy or tendinosis. If you would like to find out a little bit more about our business, or if you would like to book an appointment, please have a look at the information below.
And I'm Caroline Marlow. I'm a chartered sport and exercise psychologist who now specialises in helping people heal better from injury and pain. So exactly as you say, Ali, one of the key things that people say to you and they say to me is, when am I going to get better? What can I do to help my recovery? And at what point in time should I be able to do certain things? Now, obviously, these are really key questions. Nobody wants to be injured or in pain. Everyone wants to get better as fast as they actually can. But actually, the things that help us get better, recover better and faster, aren't necessarily the things that we first think of. But even more interestingly, the things that do predict it are things that we can actually control. And that's obviously what I'm going to be talking to you about mainly today. So we're going to look at a really interesting body of research, and that is the return to work research. So basically, over the last 5 or so decades, a lot of research has gone on to find out what is it that helps people to return to work as quickly as possible, and also what are the things which will help to predict whether somebody stays to some or all extent work disabled. Now, interestingly, the answer, as I said, is really not what we think it's going to be. In fact, no physical or medical predictors of return to work or prolonged work disability have been found. Now, this just sounds totally crazy. So it doesn't matter how severe your symptoms are, it doesn't matter how the injury happened or what the injury is, those are not reliable predictors across people of when they will actually recover and get back to work. So why is it? That seems really strange. So I know, for example, on the wonderful database of videos that you have on Treat My Achilles, there's lots of videos there which say how long various tissues take to heal.
Yes, and we have some of those in the description below if you wanted to look at those. But let's carry on with this.
But despite the fact that muscles, tendons will have a typical healing time, they're actually very different in practice. It's very different in terms of whether people feel that they're recovered and when they're actually able to go back and do what they want to do. So why is that? Well, in a previous video that I did, sorry, lots of plugs for videos here. In a previous video, Alison and I talked about how tissue damage and pain don't marry up very well. So tissue damage doesn't necessarily lead to pain, and pain likewise doesn't necessarily lead to tissue damage. So that means that people might have pain which would lead them to think that maybe they haven't recovered as well as insight they actually have. But also there are other factors, and these are 5 psychological factors which actually do predict return to work and prolonged work disability. So your priority may not be, I need to get back to work. I know we all have to, but it may not be your main priority. Maybe it is to return to sport, to be able to drive again, to be able to play with the kids, whatever your priority might be. But I think it's really prudent for us to take note of this research and see what we can learn with it. So what I'm going to do is go through the 5 factors with you, explain what they are, explain how they affect recovery, and also, of course, what we can do to help. So the first predictor is recovery expectation. So this will be your prediction, your belief of the likelihood of you getting back within a certain period of time. So why is this important? Well, we know that those people who have low recovery expectations are less likely to engage in recovery behaviour, less likely to attend appointments with medical practitioners, and also less likely to adhere to their rehab programmes. So what can you do to help with this? Well, obviously, to a certain extent, you're reliant on medical practitioners. So the first thing to do is to find a physio, an osteopath, a consultant, a GP that you actually can really trust with the information that they give you. Then when you're with them, and these are 2 questions that I'm always telling people to ask. The first one is, when should this heal? And the second one is, what can I do now, and also at other points in future times. Often I find it's really difficult for us all when we see these people and time is short to sometimes be able to ask these questions. So please make sure that you come away knowing what the physio thinks is possible, and also what you can do. I think when we're injured, sometimes we very much focus on what we can't do, not what we can do. So please think about what you can do. And the second thing, and I'm really noticing this with my clients at the moment, is please be aware of where you get your information from. So obviously social media is very much a source of information out there right now. However, there are lots of sites out there where people are understandably talking about the problems that they're having, and those can often be actually quite unhelpful if you are trying to recover yourself. It's really important to remember that everybody is absolutely different, and therefore it's not necessarily always helpful for you to listen to other people's stories, particularly if they are negative ones. If they're positive, fantastic, but generally social media channels don't tend to give us that kind of information. So yes, do look for information, but if you look for information, again, please go to trusted sources. So there's lots of information on the Trust My Achilles site. I'm putting more information on my social media channels and on my website, but also depending on the particular condition that you have, there's charities, hospitals, or any accredited medical practitioner or researcher should be a reliable source of information for you to go to. Put these together and then you start to get a clearer idea of what is possible. But also, of course, just look around you, look in the news. You will see increasingly now some miraculous recoveries from athletes. And that is often because they've got a great team around them, yes, but also a lot of that team are helping them to believe that they can get better, faster and more effectively. So please think about, when do you expect to be able to return to normal? So the second factor is your confidence in being able to cope with the symptoms and the limitations that your injury may bring. So we know that the more confident people are, the fewer sick days they have and the faster they return to work. So obviously we'd hope that therefore has implications for us getting back to the life that we want to lead. So what do you want to do about this? Well, the first thing is to really give some thought to what you can do to control your symptoms. Now, again, everyone is totally different with this. When I'm helping people, I very much refer to what is it at that moment in time which makes you feel safe. Now that might be resting your Achilles, it might be putting some heat in it, whatever is appropriate for you at that particular stage of your recovery. But think other things as well. What else can you do to your environment to make you feel safe? Nice music, being warm, whatever it is that works for you is really helpful at this stage. Now, we know that lots of people obviously reach for the medicine cabinet at this particular stage to kind of get them through the current pain. If you're to do so, please make sure that you seek advice from a GP or a pharmacist and then follow that advice. Beyond that, there's lots of things that we can be doing, and I can talk for a mighty long time on this, but the key things to do really are to maybe think of a time that you've coped with a challenge before. What lessons can you learn with that, and what can you apply to this situation? Maybe you've been injured before. Maybe you haven't, but you will have had examples of your life where you've coped with something which seemed difficult at the time, and obviously apply those. If you exist, for example, within a training group or you know other people around you, what do they do to cope when things are tough for them? So kind of take on these ideas and try and implement them into your own lives. Other things, for example, would be like relaxing and doing what you can to feel positive, to set small goals for yourself. And again, I'm sure that your physio will help you do this. So set small goals, which are achievable, crucially, but also something I really recommend that people do is to take a record of that achievement. It's very easy for us to forget that we're much further along than we were maybe a week ago or a month ago. So having some kind of record which shows that actually we're doing okay and we're coping, and maybe even pop some notes in there about what you particularly did to help yourself cope. That's really useful to look back on and very, very reinforcing. And then I think one thing that I'm always banging on about is social support. Across all kinds of unfortunate situations that people find themselves in life, social support is always the one thing which comes through as best able to help you. So often we're very, very wary of asking people for help, but people are often very keen to help. So be as specific as you can be in asking for support that you want, And then obviously also show that you are doing what you can to control it as well. I think people get more fed up of helping when they think that they're doing everything and you're not doing anything. All right. But I think people want to help, but just be specific in how they can help you. And think across a range of people. There's lots of people in your life who can probably help you in very different ways. Together, they can give you much more support than you probably think you can get. So the third factor, which we need to be aware of, which predicts recovery, is whether or not we are catastrophizing about our injury. So catastrophizing is when we think the worst, often over and over again, about how the pain is and how it is affecting us, both now and into the future. So unfortunately, many things, many worries can kind of come our way when we have injury. Some of them can potentially be quite big things, like whether we'll be able to get back to work, how it's going to affect our finances and what have you. But we know that the more we worry about that, the more it sets you against recovering effectively. So why is that? Well, there's numerous reasons. The more we catastrophize, the more we do pain behavior. So that might be things like we wince more, or perhaps we protect the area which is in pain more. Maybe we move less, we tense up more. All these kind of things are actually working against you recovering. The second thing is that often people who catastrophize are going to take more pain meds. Now, pain meds is getting more and more controversial. Sometimes, yes, they can help in the short term, but increasingly, research is showing that pain meds aren't so useful in the long term. So obviously getting into a cycle where we're taking more and more pain meds isn't helpful. The third thing which people who catastrophize tend to do is that they stay in bed for longer periods of time. Again, we're very clear now that moving is really important, for our general fitness and our general health, but also, of course, for helping recovery as well, and to prevent further deconditioning, which can lead to more injury and more pain down the line. Also, very clearly, catastrophization can lead to things like depression. Obviously, this is something we want to avoid. But also, finally, as well, people who catastrophize tend to engage less with the support and the interventions that they've been given. So all in all, the more we think negatively about our pain and our symptoms and the consequences of that, the more it will lead us to do things which aren't helpful. So what should we do instead? Now, I know that this sounds a lot easier than it is, but what we sometimes need to do is just to start off by being aware of the kind of things that we're saying to ourselves. Stop for a second, pay attention to it, and see if you can actually challenge that. Is that actually the truth? Particularly when you start anticipating what's going to happen in the future. It doesn't necessarily need to be that particular case. So see if you can challenge it, either from information from your trusted health professional or from your own experience or what have you. And then, of course, the ideal situation is if you can then replace that negative thought with something which is more positive. Something like, what if? What if I do this? What if I do that? Maybe something can be better. What can I control? All those kind of things. So hopefully a lot of what I'm saying today will help you to overcome pain catastrophization, because my main message is that we can actually control our recovery far more than we think. Another thing to do is to try and stay in the present. It's very easy when we are in injury and pain to think back to a time when we weren't injury and pain, or even think forward to what might be if the pain or injury continues. But aim not to do that. Instead, try to stay focused on the present and really focus on what you can do right now and throughout the rest of the day to kind of keep you moving forward successfully. And again, talk to people. Talk to people who will listen to you, will understand you, but also people who can give you some practical support and help along the way. So the fourth factor which helps us predict recovery from injury is whether or not we feel that we have lost something. Maybe you might be thinking, it doesn't seem fair that I haven't been able to play with the children as I'd like to over the last couple of years. Or maybe it doesn't seem right that I haven't been able to work and been missed out on this project. All those kind of things. It's when you have a sense of loss, when something you've experienced something which wasn't your fault in a sense. Also, obviously, injuries happen because of external factors. Maybe you slipped on something which shouldn't have been there. And sometimes we want to blame other people. So it's always feelings kind of wrapped up around blame and loss, which can really influence us as well. So what are the kind of things that these affect? Well, again, it means that we are less likely to be confident that the treatment's going to work. It's going to delay our recovery, and also it can bring on a huge amount of emotional distress and can also lead to things like delayed PTSD and depression. So obviously, if you feel that you have something along the lines of trauma and depression, obviously seeking clinical support for that is probably very, very key thing to do. However, it can be quite a complex thing to kind of work through, but the crux of it is that if you're focusing on loss or blame, what that's actually doing is taking away the resources that you need to focus on and do the things which are going to help you recover. So again, it's coming back to what is important for you to recover right now and what can we actually do. So sometimes we need to work to accept that that time has gone or those opportunities have gone, which again, I'm saying isn't very easy. And sometimes we need to deal with things. So maybe if we do have to deal with, I don't know, maybe legal proceedings or something along those kind of lines, really try and get, again, help with dealing with that so that you don't have to worry about it. Or even just try and compartmentalize that. So you have set times of the day or set times of the week maybe to deal with things, as opposed to letting it kind of drift away and kind of nag at you all kind of week long. So my fifth and final predictor of recovery is the health beliefs that we hold. So what are health beliefs? So these are the things that we believe to be true in relation to our health, in relation to our injury and how we actually recover. So as I've already kind of implied throughout this video, there's quite a few myths, in fact there are a lot of myths out there in our society about health, pain, injury and recovery. So in a sense, what we've got to try and do is to kind of work our way through these. And again, as I said, kind of find reliable information. So what would be some absolute classic examples that I hear, and I'm sure that Ali kind of hears all the time. So one thing I hear quite a bit is, oh, well, I'm a slow healer. Well, it's very difficult when you have an injury and you can't see inside you to know actually whether you're healing or not. So what I kind of tend to recommend that people do is that they have a look at other things around, and I've been bitten all over the place the last couple of days from when I've been out and about in the fields. So, is that healing well? If you cut yourself, does that heal well? So maybe look for kind of more obvious signs that your body is kind of capable of healing. Other things would be that scans and x-rays will always show what's wrong. Well, unfortunately, that isn't the case. And hopefully the more we talk about how our psychology and our thinking affects pain, injury and recovery, hopefully the clearer it is that actually not everything can be shown on a scan. Aligned with that is this great belief which we have that the medics need to fix us. Well, we know that through quite a lot of research now that the more that people take control of their recovery, the better they do actually recover. So unfortunately, we often get caught in this huge situation where we're being put from one appointment to another specialist because of this desperate need to find something and for someone to fix us. But actually, that isn't always very helpful, or at least do what you can to control whilst you're going through that situation. Relying on pain meds, relying on alcohol, well, both of those are a no. Both of those will kind of take you, work against your healing processes in a long time. So if you are relying on pain meds and alcohol, again, maybe go and see your GP and discuss alternatives. Or obviously if you're coming off meds, please make sure you talk to a doctor so that you kind of do it in a kind of controlled fashion. Believing that you rest more is a classic one I've mentioned already. Again, back in the old days, if you hurt your back, you'd be in bed for weeks. But that really isn't the advice anymore. And again, your trusted physio will be able to tell you the kind of activity and rest patterns that you can do to kind of most effectively help you. And then another one which we hear, and it's still out there in sport world, it kind of might wonder why, but that kind of no pain, no gain mentality. I was talking to someone the other day and they were talking about how the older generation has a tough it out mentality. These kind of things aren't necessarily helpful because you're going to be like pushing yourself through pain, and that's when you probably are potentially going to do yourself kind of more kind of damage into the future. So those are some of the examples or some of the beliefs that hold. But if ever you kind of think anything is to be true about your injury, just stop and think for a second and think, hang on, is that necessarily the case? And is there evidence out there to support you with that? So hopefully I've given you lots of tips to think about, but I think the overall biggest screaming take-home message that I want you to have is that you can control far more to help your recovery than we probably think that we can.
Well, that was brilliant. Thank you very much
Pleasure.
for this. It's just an eye-opener into lots of things that I hear with patients and lots of things that I come up with, and then I think, oh gosh, what can I do with that information? So to know that we've got a few really easy, helpful hints that people can go away and think on. But equally, this is very generic, isn't it? So I think we're talking about when people come to see you, it would be much more of an individualised manner.
Absolutely. I mean, we know that every piece of support that we do is very individual. I mean, obviously, everyone comes with their own thoughts, their own feelings, their own things that they think they need to do. So these are kind of like some bullet point kind of thoughts. But obviously, the more we can personalise them to you, the better. But that doesn't mean to say that there are lots of things in there that you can be aware of and sort of try and tweak yourselves in the main as well.
Yeah. Brilliant. And so where can people find you if they would like to explore this a little bit more?
Well, thank you. Well, I've just started doing Facebook and Instagram for my craziness. So having just told you not to do social media, I hope that I'm one of the reliable sources that you can go to on there. But also, please go to my website. I know that Alison will make sure that the link's underneath. So on my website, it's got information, just general information about injury and pain. So have a look through there. I'm trying to think what's on there now. But have a look through that information. But also, of course, information of how I can help you. And there's also a link so you can book a free chat so we can really see if I'm the right person to help move you forward. So I hope that all that's useful and that you are recovering better soon.
Brilliant. Thank you for listening, and I hope that we might see you again.
I'd like to think so. Thanks now. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.